Welcome to the Daily Coffee Pro, beautiful people. Today on the podcast, we're talking about independent thinking and why it's more important than ever in the coffee industry. All right. I've been going on a lot about independent thinking and not buying into group thinking, and I wanted to dissect why I am so vehemently opposed to group thinking and why I am such a fan of independent thinking. People benefit from you being on their team. People benefit from you buying into their ideologies. People benefit from being able to manipulate you based on those ideologies. When they have got you in their group, you hand over the way that you think and the way that you make decisions to them. Now, this happens on a lot of different spectrums. It happens in religious spectrums, in government spectrums, politics across the board. It happens in teams with regards to things like the way different industries should be run and different sub-industries within industries. So, in our example, one way of looking at that would be people who are strictly specialty coffee people and the elites in specialty coffee versus commercial grade coffee and, fuck Starbucks and all this kind of stuff. That's a kind of group thinking. Or death to decaf. What is that about? All these kinds of group thinking ideas disentangle you from the responsibility of having to think for yourself. And so on one side we have group thinking, and on the other side we have independent thinking. And there are pros and cons to independent thinking, and I want to talk about them today. Because people have been asking me, what's the point? I don't know what to believe anymore. So aren't I better just doing what other people think we should be doing? Or aren't I better just belonging to a group and moving in a pack that way? So I thought we'd go through some of the pros and cons of independent thinking, because especially now in the coffee industry, now more than ever, people need you to belong to their group so that they can categorize you either with them or against them. And this is something that exists in this whole cancel culture thing. I think it's absolutely hilarious that people are changing the definitions of words and phrases and then attacking people who challenge those things. So at the moment, there's a couple of graphics going around and saying people who have a problem with cancel culture are feeling intimidated by their white fragility, or some version of that. It's the people who have a problem with cancel culture that really don't have a relationship with their white fragility. All white people this and all black people that. And look, think what you want. But that's simply untrue. It's simply untrue to make statements like that. And this is why it's important to advocate for independent thinking. A major part, a core part of the Mapper Forward brand is about empowering independent thinking so that you make decisions about your career and your business, the value chain you support, and the way that you service your customers in the coffee industry based on your own values, not on the virtue signaling and signals from other people in the industry. So let's look at the pros and cons. What are the pros of independent thinking? First and foremost, you are unhooked from being a part of an ideological group, and you have the freedom to think for yourself. Now, you already have the freedom. Nobody can give you freedom to think a certain way. You already inherently have that. But you can give up that freedom. And so every time you give up your freedom to think for yourself, you are betraying an opportunity you have to think and make decisions. I've had a real problem with this in the coffee industry. I found this very challenging in my time living in America anyway, because there are lots of groups that form. But in the coffee industry, over the last 20 years, what I've noticed is that people are scared of others knowing that they don't know what they're talking about. And so therefore they'll follow the cool kids. They'll follow the coffee elite so that they won't get cut out of the group. And so they'll give up their independent thinking and their freedom to do that and challenge ideas, because to do so would be dangerous. So freedom is the first pro to independent thinking. The second pro to independent thinking, it's empowering to make decisions for yourself based on thinking for yourself. There's a confidence in that, which is the third pro to independent thinking. When you can base your decisions on your own thinking and you have your own reasons from information and data that you've collected from trusted sources, where you haven't been tricked into things like, and again, please know that I'm not advocating or dissing any of this, these groups that I'm about to mention. You're free to do and think and explore whatever the fuck you want. All I'm saying is that, for example, you can notice a post that somebody has made when they're a QAnon minion. You know that they're a QAnon minion when they're starting to talk about, or close to being a minion, when they're starting to talk in the same kind of flow of ideas as other QAnon minions. So right now, sex trafficking is the thing that everyone that follows QAnon is talking about. Sex trafficking and child trafficking is not new. It's been happening for millennia. Now is when people who follow QAnon and are tapped into that pulse of information are talking about QAnon. Next week, it's going to be about something different. And you'll notice that these people need to tout constantly. They're pushing QAnon's agenda. If you're going to that pace of information, it's a form of virtue signaling. You're letting other QAnoners, or whatever they call themselves, know that you're a part of that group. That's not independent thinking. You may think that you are telling people who don't know about sex trafficking that this is going on and this is the agenda behind COVID-19. All you're doing is regurgitating information that other people are telling you. An independent thinker doesn't do that. An independent thinker looks at the stuff at what QAnon is looking at and says, well, hold on, I've got to poke holes in that. I've got to understand what's the validity of the information that's coming from. Same thing with people like Alex Jones. You know, the Jeffrey Epstein thing is a fantastic example. Alex Jones has been talking about that for a couple of decades. And it's been interesting to see the way that story has unfolded. But you'll notice that people who were pro Alex Jones had one thing to say and people who were anti Alex Jones had another thing to say. And then when the Jeffrey Epstein fuckery came out, the QAnon people jumped on board and said, see, we told you all of this sex trafficking thing was going to come out. That's what COVID-19 is. It's a shill to reveal that we put Trump in power in order for him to bring down the shill government or the deep state government. Okay, but there are a bunch of holes that could be poked in that story. So believing something like that blindly is dangerous. When you can make statements like that with nuance and understand and explore the nuance, there's an empowerment to that. When I first started in coffee, 18 years ago, the interesting thing about it was back then, specialty coffee had a whole different, it didn't even have a name. We didn't call it specialty coffee in Australia back then. But over the years, we started following different group thinking styles. And I was absolutely guilty of doing this. You don't learn how to become an independent thinker from starting as an independent thinker. You're a part of a group and you realize that this keeps getting proven wrong again and again and again. And I'm an idiot. And only through being an idiot can you figure out like, hey, I don't want to feel like a fool anymore. And so we started the blacker the better when it came to espresso. And no, it's got to be double rizzies. And then it's got to be single rizzies. And then it's got to be, shots that run for 60 seconds. At the time, all of these things were the right way to do things. But that's a part of group thinking. Independent thinkers, when it comes to espresso and brew methods and coffee, think for themselves. They decide, this is the coffee that I want to serve to my customers, and this is how I think is the best way to extract it, and this is why. And that's empowering, and it gives you a sense of confidence. The third pro to all of this. The fourth pro and the final pro that I want to present is that it makes you smarter to be an independent thinker, because you're challenging everything that you hear and you get into a rhythm of just saying, let me check if that's true. That's a new idea I never thought of. I wonder how valid that is. And that's tricky. Look, that's tricky in normal times. It's even trickier in these times, because how do you know what's true now? You've got Dr. Fauci saying one thing about the coronavirus, and then his boss is telling you something completely different. And in order to validate his ideologies as the president of the country, he turns around and says that hospitals aren't allowed to report their numbers to the CDC. They have to report them directly to the government. Come on now. Independent thinkers see that and they say, there's some fuckery going on there. And that drives them to understand what's going on. When you do that, in the process of trying to understand what's going on, you get smarter and you keep growing and you keep finding your people. And just I'll quickly sneak in another pro that I didn't think about when I was preparing for this episode. You become more attractive to other independent thinkers. Independent thinkers don't want to spend time with stupid people or ignorant people. So if you're looking to find a group of people in your life that are smarter than you, and that's what I think we all should be looking for, start thinking for yourself, because you'll always look for things that are available to you to learn. Now, what are some of the cons of independent thinking? It's hard. Independent thinking is hard, especially in the beginning, once you start to take the journey, because you have to rewire the way that you approach things. Previously, you've taken the easy road. Oh, I don't understand politics, so I'm just going to let somebody else tell me how I should think about that. I don't really know the difference between the left and the right, so it doesn't matter what I think. Or, well, everybody else is thinking that this is the way, that this is the new product I should release in my cafe. I'm going to release an iced latte bottle because that's what everyone's telling me to do. I'm going to only do this thing because that's what insert coffee elite's name told me that I should be doing. It's hard. And you have to take responsibility for yourself. And because of that, you have to do a whole bunch of rewiring. So that's, for some people, that's going to be seen as one of the cons of independent thinking. The second one, you won't be popular. If you're a part of a group where everyone's telling you that you should be cancelling everybody in the coffee industry out, that doesn't, if they've got white skin and they aren't doing exactly what a group of people are telling you to do, and for that reason they need to get cancelled. If that's your group of people who require you to do what they say simply because they've said it, then what ends up happening is that once you start challenging their status quo and their ideologies, they will cancel you. They will no longer want to be around you because you're doing the thing that they don't want. You're challenging them to think for themselves. And people who buy into group thinking don't like things like logic and nuance and understanding the complexity of different ideas. So bear in mind, you won't be popular if you're a part of a group thinking crowd in the short term. But that will change. And knowing that is helpful. I promise you. The final thing is, one of the cons is that you have to decide everything for yourself. And that can get pretty tough to have to do when you've let everybody else make decisions for you. So if you're a passive participant in society and you just do what people are telling you to do, if you look to other inspirational people who are inspirational for no reason, look, the people who should be inspiring you right now are the people who are telling you how to be independent. The influencers on Instagram, the influencers in the coffee industry, the influencers everywhere who are trying to get you to buy into their ideology are doing that because you become a customer base. So if you're able to make decisions for yourself and you decide to do that, it's all of these cons that we've talked about where you become unpopular and, it takes a lot of work and you have to do all this research and all that kind of stuff. There's a kind of vulnerability of doing things different than the way most people are doing them that can get unnerving. Because you don't know if what you're basing your decisions on are going to pan out. When you do what other people are doing, you're assuming that because you think they got successful from it, you're going to get successful from it. Independent thinkers are people who are vulnerable a lot of the time. And that can get lonely. But at least you won't have people dragging you down with their ideologies. And from my journey and the journey of other independent thinkers, what I've come to realize is that loneliness translates to having more space in your mind, less anxiety. And as someone who's prone to anxiety over the years, that was really helpful for me to get control of it. Thinking independently and having the confidence to make my own decisions about how I operate in the coffee industry and in life affords me the ability to understand why I'm doing certain things and to anticipate things that are coming long before a lot of people can. And that unto itself is a kind of superpower that's really important, and that strangely enough, leads us into our next episode, which is about superpowers. So join me on the next episode of the Daily Coffee Pro by Map It Forward to talk about superpowers. Peace, love, and peanut butter, friends. Have an amazing rest of your day.